Alright, I did some work, so I'm gonna end my hiatus, and hopefully I can get back to releasing videos semi-regularly. Of course, the Kirk thing is still not a thing. Therefore, while I offer condolences, I can't do much else. And seeing as an apology doesn't really mean much when a man is literally dead, instead, let's talk about the response and how the Republicans, or really any party, should respond to a situation where a man or group is killed. And so we shall talk about crackdowns and restraint. Now, the thing is, a response is necessary. Sometimes a violent response is. See, when you have a people willing to, through force, ensure their own will, you naturally have to factor that into your calculations of how you should treat them. For example, if I'm holding a knife and I actively threaten someone, logically, you should treat me as someone who is a threat to someone and their well-being. It's basic reasoning. And when you have a side willing to commit violence, clearly, and who has actively targeted a moderate, this isn't extremist on extremist infighting like in Weimar Germany. This is people attacking a moderate. You're gonna need to act more forcefully. Now, what I would suggest is, 1, crack down on crime. This is for a number of reasons. 1, it's power projection without actually targeting the moderates of the enemy side. See, the right and the left are still combative right now. They're still fighting. There's no debating there. But I doubt moderates on the left want to escalate to full force. It's mostly those on the fringes and those who are turning to the fringes. Given the fact that they're constantly calling the enemies extremists and fascists, it makes sense that they'd go to that point. But the reality is, a crackdown on crime is the quickest way to use force without triggering a great response. Well, even a moderate response, truthfully. See, if you go after criminals, 1, most people generally don't care as much about them. But 2, here's the important thing. You're gonna have to go after them eventually anyways. It doesn't matter if you're a Democrat or Republican. You cannot tolerate criminals walking around. Fundamentally, you can't. You say, oh, what about this crime, that crime? Okay, make a law about it that says this is fine, boom, you're done. If you don't believe that weed should be illegal, make a law that makes it legal. Simple. But a thief needs to be punished, or else others will do the same, and not always for good reason. A thief may genuinely, actually believe that they need to do so in order to help their family. It doesn't change the fact that if they do it, and it's shown that they're getting away with it, someone else will think, I could do that too. And you're gonna have people who do it not for reasons of helping their family or taking care of themselves, but just because it's fun or because they can do it. You gotta have to crack down on crime regardless if it's for moral reasons, purely because you need to show that this is unacceptable. And especially after a violent situation like this, the right, and the US government more broadly, needs to demonstrate that doing bad things, using force in such a manner, is not a good thing, and it comes with a response. The shooter should obviously be punished. I'm for the death penalty in this case. But even for gangs like in Chicago, or DC, or really anywhere, just take your pick of criminal underbellies, they need to be put in line, crushed, arrested, dealt with. Especially now, because we need to show that our country is still strong. We can still handle ourselves. Simultaneously, we must restrain extremists. When I say restraining them, I don't mean we need to kill every single extremist. No. Instead, we need to, 1, isolate them from the moderates, 2, re-establish communication with moderates on the other side. Kirk's death severed a big line of communication between the moderates on the left and the moderates on the right. We need to reestablish that. firmly so we can get people heading rightward. A lot of liberals are already doing that after the response to Kirk, but we need to do it now even more so. And two, we need to break their pipelines. See, a lot of people in the news like to talk about an alt-right pipeline, especially those in the left wing. And, of course, streamers like Hassan Piker have talked about it too. But there's pipelines in both ways. See, when it comes to political polarization, there's not just one pipeline. In truth, there's several. So you have the alt-right, you have socialists, libertarians, fascists, and anarchists. See, there are a whole bunch of pipelines that each lead to extremist beliefs. For example, a statist who wants to collectivize everything will go down this route. If you're a nationalist but you still like a lot of collectivist policies, here. If you're a monarchist or some other form of extremist for tradition, here. And these two are, we don't trust the government, so we need to establish autonomous communities, but these guys want to collectivize everything, aka these guys, but completely impossible beliefs, and these guys want to establish self-sustaining communities with capital. See, the center is constantly shifting, but because of these pipelines, it's getting pulled further left. We need to break these pipelines. We need to deal with Destiny and others who advocate for further left policies, not by killing them, but by debunking them, showing them to be wrong, and otherwise shattering them. Furthermore, we need the news to steer away from them, or at the very least encourage them to go rightwards, because if the news is constantly spewing the same rhetoric as it used to, and still kinda does, it will naturally result in these pipelines not only strengthening, but making this, and this worse. These guys I can handle. These guys are a giant pain and deserve to die. And these guys, freaking crazies. But if the news is promoting these insanities over here, guess what? These guys will get worse. And these guys are likely going to be the ones that grow the least. Do you want to know why? Because when someone's punching you in the face, your response isn't, I should put down my gun. It's not, I should be more peaceful. When someone is using the state, or any entity, to encourage violence, the response isn't to become more libertarian, usually. It's to say, I want the stick that the state offers, and I want it to be used for my cause. Whatever that cause may be. As a result, you are naturally going to have this escalating further and further and further. We don't want this. So how do you stop this? Again, deal with the people that are encouraging the leftward movement, deal with Piker, break them ideologically. Make it so that people don't believe them, and you can shatter these pipelines. If Hassan Piker became irrelevant politically, this wouldn't grow as much. If Vosh became unironically useless in terms of spreading his ideas, this would be useless. And so, people are going to move to the center. They're unlikely to go here, here, or here, because, let's face it, if someone's already over here, they're not likely to support these other beliefs. But, if they can be moved to the center, well, that's one thing done. As a result, by doing that, breaking their pipelines, shattering the ability for them to spread, this failure, and more failure, what will naturally come is people will go more moderate. I may not agree with the moderates, because I'd be roughly, here. I mean, my ideas are freaking insane, I'm not exactly hiding it. But, if we break these, people will go here, and I'd rather deal with a moderate that doesn't want to shoot me in the face than deal with a socialist who'd rather gut me like a fish. So yeah, there's that. Now, another thing to note is just general restraint. When I say general restraint, what I mean is this. We cannot act completely aggressive. Yes, without question, the left has engaged in violence. They will continue to engage in violence unless we take precautions. And they've done it for years. Bare minimum Summer of Love was the earliest. And that's assuming we don't count the earlier years when Occupy Wall Street went a bit interesting. But we cannot burn our country to get rid of one weed. See, the United States needs to come out of this relatively intact. Now, that being said, we should acknowledge that yes, it is mainly the left causing this. However, political violence on a whole, they are correct, is bad. If only they would stop calling everyone to the right of Obama fascist, but leave it to them. Regardless, we still need restraint. We still need to hold ourselves to a standard. And to anyone who says, oh, the deplatforming, one, not very happening, companies are just not hiring or firing people. Sorry, let me rephrase. They're not hiring people who said they support Kirk's deaths, and they're definitely firing people who said they did. Not a bad thing, honestly, because that's freedom of association, and I don't understand why anyone with their right mind would associate with a freaking murderer or a person who supports them. Then again, weird ladies worship the people who are serial killers, so people are weird, let's just leave it at that. But regardless, if we're going to solve this problem, we cannot immediately go to violence. I am not above violence, yes, but I do not want my country to turn into a bloodbath. I want it to be better, to have a proper functioning economy, society, military, and government. How do you do that? Oh, right, you, 1, deal with the problems in the legal system, reform it if necessary, if there are kinks, and you make sure the extremists who dragged us to this situation are dealt with, and we can get contact with the moderates to reduce polarization. I will say this bluntly, until the left backs the freak down, the right is not going to. I'm definitely going to be the first to admit I'm not going to tolerate any more nonsense of pretending like, oh yeah, we should pretend like they have any semblance of validity when it's clear they can't even debate a man who's fairly moderate and still is not as advanced as an expert in terms of understanding these things. If they had to shoot this man, they clearly don't know jack. Therefore, I will not pretend like their ideas hold any weight. But that does not mean we should crush them completely. A civil war will cause bodies upon bodies, more children missing their fathers, their mothers, and everyone else that meant anything to them. I don't want that. So while yes, a crackdown is necessary, it's pretty much guaranteed, we must still hold restraint. But hey, if the left calms the freak down, we deal with crime, we restrain the extremists, and everything's done, well, in such a case, I believe firmly that we should dial it back. When you know you're dealing with a sane person, it's perfectly fine to cooperate with them. If that means we have to threaten them with a knife to do so, well then that's just the unfortunate reality of dealing with aggressive politics. But eventually, I trust, we can put the knives away, and that'll become unnecessary. Anyways, have a good day. I'll probably post another video so I can make up for the one I missed, but have a good one.